second step in buy and hold is rehab. So let's talk about rehab right now. As the first thing in overseeing a rehab, you need to estimate the cost before purchase. Do not go in blind. Like that one-page sheet I passed around, you want to have at least an idea where you're at, because, and you want to learn, measure. When you have to do your final scope of work, compare that to your initial, because if you're wildly off when you just run through and add them up really quick, it's going to make your negotiations tough. You have to go back to the negotiation table. It happens. Don't be worried to do so, but you don't want to make a habit of it. You get your utilities turned on, and then you prepare your scope of work. You can check the plumbing and the electrical and whatnot. Bid out the work if you're using contractors or subcontractors. And I would get, unless you've got a contractor that you've used before and they do really well by you, I would say you get at least 2 bids, especially early on. You want to oversee project. You want to pick the main contractor and the start date. Pick the one out of the bids. Oversee the project and the vendors through to completion. Complete the punch out, and I will warn you, punch out always takes longer than you anticipate. It's amazing how many little knickknacks will jump out at you, and then it's like, oh yeah, I got to do this. Oh yeah, we got to do this. Just know, you got 3 weeks to finish the project. It's going to be at least a week on the punch out. Well, not. There's going to be plenty of time to punch out too. And then approve the payments, and we'll talk about that more. But let's do this real quick. This is the house that we purchased. Actually, we talked about it the other week. It's on 929 East 77th. It looks terrible, and we brought it back to life. So, in real estate and buy and hold, do sweat the small stuff. The small stuff is often very important, particularly with regards to the exterior in the front yard in particular. I know I said don't make the property glow. If there's one exception to that, it's the front yard. I don't know why I'm doing that, but here. So this is a fourplex bond in Raytown. We did spend quite a bit of money on this property. I don't know why it's doing that. Maybe it's for this. We did spend quite a bit of money on this property, but it was mostly on the interior. We did not spend much on the front. It was renting for $500 a unit before. Now it's renting for $650, and a lot of that had to do with just a couple of little things. We painted the trim. We did not paint the base. We painted the front door. We added these window boxes, and these in front put some flowers in them right there. And little things, shutters, paint new shutters and paint them. Window boxes. You don't even need to put flowers in. This was an exception. Bark mulch in the front. Put some bark mulch in the front. It makes it look much more livable. Bushes and little plants and whatnot in the front yard are great too. Clean it up. There's nothing worse. I mean, we talked about anchoring before. If you have a bunch of trash in front of your property, anchor. They think this is a dump. Clean up the property and try to keep it as clean, especially when you're showing to tenants or selling for that matter. So standardize. I can't say this enough. You do not want to have 15 houses with 15 different paint colors, 15 different types of carpet, 15 different. It will drive you crazy. The main thing to standardize is your paint. Same paint color. Now I recommend 2-tone. Doing a bit, just one tone is quite a bit cheaper, but there's for the money. I think it really brings the property to life to give it 2 tones. Paint the trim a off-white color, and the base sort of a dark beige-ish, light, very light brownish color. Don't go too dark; it makes the room look smaller. And I don't use flat paint. I hate flat paint. If you put a crown across it, you cannot get that off of the live view. And it's just so drab. I wouldn't go semi-gloss, it's too shiny, but like satin, in my recommendation. Use the same countertops, generally with rentals will be Formica. Same carpet and vinyl. I would not recommend builder's grade. It's the cheapest, and we don't want to make these things glow really, but builder's grade carpet is so thin and just wears out so quickly, you're pretty much going to be replacing it every turnover. So go at least a step above that. Same appliances, maybe switch off between black and white with the same brand, or size occasionally, try to keep the same brand. Same light fixtures, same ceiling fans, everything you can do is the same. And if you are buying multiple classes of properties, instead of just going doing everything exactly the same, you have really like an upper end house that you're renting out, and you want to put stainless steel appliances, go ahead. Then make 2 lists. Make your standardized items for this type of rental, like Class C rental, make type of 5 is for Class B rental, and just go from there. But standardize as much as possible. You will thank me in the future if you do that. Okay, so this is what our scope of work looks like. Actually, not, but it's what my scope of work sheet that I put together in order to put together a scope of work sheet looks like. Yeah, there'll be a test of this after this. So yeah. Anyways, hope you can pass out a couple of those. I'd appreciate it.
And again, well, if you email us, we can give you this stuff too if you want.
Yes. So here I've listed out various things like I like the paint, the exterior paint. Is it good? If it's bad, what are the notes about it? Siding, or maybe it's good, but there's one little tiny thing, so I note that in the column there. Siding, roof, all the way down, the lot, the garage. And then other here, because there's often things that just don't qualify in general categories. This, I turn into this. And I know this is written in Andrewese, and it's unreadable by any other person on the planet, but I can, and I then turn it into this. So Phil, now once you're done with that, if you can hand out our finished scope of work. This is the finished scope of work that we have for property that we're going to discuss some more in a bit. But it basically looks like this. Now, note a couple things about the scope of work. First of all, up here we have the contractor lead. This is an employee of ours, actually, he's the lead on that project. This one doesn't have, but generally I'll have the time. We have a time goal, so this project I think is 3 weeks, and it should be on that sheet. I think I updated after I put it in here. The next thing, note, we have the contractor or employee total here. So that right there is the cost of only the contractor. Like I talked in the previous presentation, you know, the contractor might pay $12,000. There's all those vendor items. There are all those vendor items that are going to add up. You have to be aware of them. So the next we have our vendor list. So right here we have landscaping. We're going to have a company come out and do the landscaping for us. At the flooring, we're going to have a company come out and do the flooring, and on down the list. So then we come up with our vendor sum, and then I've got to add the vendor sum and the contractor total together. I've got to take in holding costs into consideration, and also got to have that 20% contingency, 20% of thereabout. We use 20%. So stuff, they're change orders. There's always going to be change orders, and so just be aware of it and build it into your budget. That gives the total. We've done this project is $27,000. So we're going to put together a scope of work together. This is the property that we purchased. It's on 1166 East 76 Terrace, right close to our office. Beautiful Tudor home. I call them gingerbread houses, but it's a great house. It just needs a little bit of fixing up. So I'm going to go to slides of various pictures of it. Just shout out anything you think that needs to be put on our scope of work. I will be handing out gold stars, so please. Okay, so here we go. Here's the first picture. This is the side of the house. What do we got? What do we need? Siding right here. Do we need anything else other than just siding? Gutters. Oh, nice. Okay, we got the gutters. Anything else?
Brick mold.
What's that?
Brick mold.
Trim mold. The trim mold. Yes, actually, you're going to need trim. You need trim right here. And you're also going to need window trim.
What about gutters?
Yeah, the gutters and the downspout. Was there another one?
The front door, does it close right on all those
The front door is not on this picture. The front door is not on this picture, actually. This is
Oh, that
not.
door.
There's a window.
Is that a window?
This is it's a weird looking window. So it does not close right. It doesn't open either. Very rare. So let's so we got to insulate, side, paint, and trim along this area right here.
Where's your gutters then?
Oh, we need to put it back on. We need to fix the spatial board. This one right here, it's a tiny little thing, but it looks bad. And if a tenant comes, a potential resident looks at it and might think, man, this landlord doesn't take care of their property very well. Bark mulch and landscaping, it's not you don't have to do it. But we do a little bark mulch right here, really bring the property to line. Gutter and a downspout, definitely going to want that. And also, this brick facade here is kind of faded a little bit, it's a little dirty. Just power wash it. We don't need to do anything else to it. Just power wash it, clean it up. Okay, so here's the side of the house. What do we need to do here? You think these steps work really well?
Handrail?
Well, the handrail's here, but we could definitely use the spindles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Siding on the house.
And we need to have the basement window. Elevation, round around.
If it was a finished unit in a bedroom, we would, but because this is just a unfinished basement, there's nothing down there, we don't have to have egress, unfortunately, out of it, because But yeah, there is a little, I'm talking about another slide, there is a little bit of a gap where you can see through and air can get in there, so we do need to fill that gap.
Siding.
The siding is not actually that bad, it doesn't need to be cleaned, it's probably worth power washers. Oh, you're talking about the piece of trim right here, right? Yes, that piece of trim is rotted right there, just a little spot, we need to replace that,
Make
absolutely.
sure the water's flowing away from the house, away from the basement.
Yeah, absolutely, you always want, this property, it actually might not appear that way, but it does flow away, but that's a very good point. You always want to make sure property is graded properly. It's endlessly frustrating when I go to a house and it's in perfect condition, but they leave it where there's like just this hill going right here, their foundation wall, and then the foundation is this far in. And the the panel is like that on the wall. There's an electrical panel down in the basement, and that's that's thousands and thousands of dollars of work to do, and all they need to do is add some dirt. And so grading is extremely important. Don't neglect grading. Okay, so yeah, this one we'll just run through real quick. You got them all. First of all, you can't see this really, but there was an AC compressor unit that was supposed to be kind of right about in this area. It grew the legs and ran off. And
What was
very,
the
very
address?
sad.
Compressor's cage?
Yeah. Yeah, not a bad idea to put a cage on it if it's in an area that has some crime issues. Put a cage around it. We need some steps for the stairs. Those are not the code right now. We need some spindles for the rail. This cable box is completely disrepair, either get rid of it or get it back in order. And we need to replace that rock piece of trim and paint it to match. What do we got here?
You have a really bad
Facial
angle
board,
for
down
the
board.
The house is not leaning really. Okay. What we're looking at, okay, but this is a problematic doorway. It's not.
Big step.
Doorway to
It's a big step, yeah.
the deck.
The foundation is not, it's settled a little bit. It's settled some, but it's not terrible. These older houses have generally settled some.
Looks like these
It needs a deck. It definitely needs a deck. They're sort of missing a deck. And so we probably want to put in about 10 by 6 deck. We got actually guys on staff, fortunately, who can do this very quickly and cheaply, very good at it. We also want to repair this trim board along the base here. That extends a little bit further than where we want the deck to go. We need to add stairs to the deck, we need to add spindles, rail, and we want to stain the deck too, protect it from the weather. In addition to that, this garage door is kind of hard to see, but it's a little bit discolored. The paint is peeling on this garage, or not garage, basement door here. So we probably want to paint that to match as close as we can. And you can't paint to match if you take like a chip of the paint, a little piece of it, take it to Home Depot or Sherwin-Williams. It can usually match it pretty well. It's not every time. We've had our struggles with that, but generally they can match it pretty well. Okay, what do we have here? This is the living room.
Dr. Ford has received
This is actually a little deceptive. This floor is already sanded. There's no stain on it, except along these corners. Now when they're sanding the floor, what they do is they sand it down, or it's just already bare. They'll put a layer of stain and they'll put a layer of polyurethane on it. So you need to, if you buff off the polyurethane, you can stain it again, but you're staining over stain that's already there. So sometimes you can get away with that, it's cheaper, but they've already sanded off all of it except this one little edge, but there's also no stain there. So we need to sand just the sides and then restain. Other than that, it's pretty good actually. There's not a lot to do here. So we want to sand the edges of the floors only. We want to stain the floors. And the walls the paint is pretty good. And we like the old wood trim, especially in a house like this. It fits the vibe of the house. But we do need to clean the walls off, and there might be a little bit of touch of paint. In addition to that, we almost always, I think, now change out our outlets and outlet covers, and switch covers too. The switches, they're not that expensive. It's like $1 something for a cover, and it's like a couple bucks for an outlet or whatnot. And the old ones look very dated and ugly. They've often been painted or whatever. So we like to change that. They make get a house with much better vibe, and they're not very expensive.
What do you do when you have non-grounded outlets?
Non-grounded outlets, I mean, grounding is nice, but it's not in,
Don't put in grounded plug.
Well, that's
Yeah.
up to the,
yeah.
but you would go back and.
We do not run a ground wire, no. It's,
Make sure you get the right that outlet.
you just gotta get the right outlets, yeah, exactly.
You put GFIs in?
Oh, we're gonna talk about it right
You know, I mean, in a non-grounded.
now. GFI, I have
You
to.
can't. The GFI doesn't work, it's not ground now.
No, I don't know. Okay, and we have not dealt with many non-grounded, the vast majority of them, that's why I hesitate there. We were saying like, when was the last time we had a non-grounded house? Most of them, we run across are grounded. So we're in the kitchen. What was that?
Paint.
Paint, yeah?
Back wall.
And the paint is probably the right call. This is a rental, we're not going perfect, so these cabinets are perfectly functioning in order, they're just not particularly attractive.
New faucet, more modern faucet.
Yeah. That's an option, yes, sir. This is, faucet functions, works fine, but you could add a faucet. That's I would say a maybe. It depends on what you're going for. But yeah, so here what we're doing, we're painting kitchen cabinets, plus let's add some poles. So we often paint them black in these cases, and they actually look pretty good. And oftentimes just adding a new pole, the handles to the cabinets really brings it to life. In addition to that, this is another maybe. I hate butcher block. It's sort of just my I just don't like the look of it. It looks tacky to me. So this is a short run, cheap, but it's kind of tough. You can epoxy paint a lot of stuff. You can do it with bathtubs, backsplashes, and this is probably this. Just make sure you have to clean it very, very thoroughly. Otherwise, it won't stick and it'll peel off. But I just epoxy paint those backsplash. Appliances, I know you can't see them, but they're appliances. And this probably doesn't have a dishwasher, but it's got plenty of cabinets. There's more cabinets than just this. So we just take this cabinet out right here and add a dishwasher and plumb it for dishwasher spot. All your plumbing's right here, so it's very easy. So that's another thing to look for. Like, this probably doesn't have a dishwasher. That's something a lot of residents will want. Healthy leasing. If it's pretty simple and you have plenty of cabinet space still, take out a cabinet and plumb it for dishwasher. Also, you can't see this, but the tile is in great shape, but the grout is like gone, so we need to reach out the tile.
What's your opinion about garbage disposal?
You know, I've heard of mixed reviews. I've heard people say that they're completely useless. I've heard people say they're worse than useless, and I've also heard people say you're insane not to have them.
What's the question?
Garbage disposals. Do you want, or do you think garbage disposal is a good thing or bad, or what's my opinion of it? Phil, what's your opinion?
We usually leave them there. If they're there, we won't install them if they're not.
So if they're there, we leave them. If they're not there, we usually don't
And we
install
also
them.
say if there's a dishwasher, we usually think there should be a garbage disposal, but that's not 100%.
Yeah, that's more in the maybe category, but I don't have a great answer for you. I've heard so many different things, and I'm not actually positive.
Through my personal experience, spend a few extra dollars, if you're gonna put one in, put in a good one.
Okay, all right,
Make
that's
you
a
make,
good
you
one.
put in a cheap one, you're gonna buy it again.
Okay, that's probably a good point there. And we'll have the questions at the end of that. I'll get to those in a second.
And whether you have one or not, they're still gonna put chicken bones down there.
And we're in the kitchen, so grounded, install a GFCI outlet. You only need one, unless it's a huge kitchen, it's on more than one breaker. But each outlet down the line is on that load, and so that GFCI will cover it. And GFCI is a ground fault circuit interrupter, and you want them near any source of water. So kitchens and bathrooms, you don't need them in bedrooms, so you want them there. That way if there's water gets on it or whatnot, it just shuts it off immediately. And we want to, it's first of all, it's code, and also we want to provide safe and decent housing for our residents. So make sure to put those GFCIs in there.
In your
Get-
rentals,
get-
do you provide a fridge for
Yes,
dishwasher?
we do provide all the-
washer dryer?
We do not provide water.
Unless it's a stackable.
Unless it's stackable.
It's stackable,
The
we don't
only
expect people
exception.
to have a stackable.
And we try to avoid having to put stackable because we don't want that. Okay, so we're in the upstairs bathroom. I'm gonna run through these a little faster and just go through them. And I know you can barely see that. I forgot to put my flash on here. But a couple of things. One, we're gonna regrout the tile. Just like, I don't know what the deal with the grout in this house was, but it's just not there. I don't like this vanity. It's really just a sink. And usually you want the cabinets especially. There's a medicine cabinet. People have more stuff than that usually to put in the bathroom. So we replace sinks and put vanities in. I don't even like pedestal sinks. We need a blind for the window, we need a GFCI outlet. Here's a bedroom, not a lot here, it's in pretty good shape.
Closet door.
Yeah, we do need a closet door. And one thing I would recommend not forgetting about is door stops. If you don't have a door stop on, they're gonna start to tear up your, they're just gonna open the door, throw it into the wall, and you're gonna start doing a lot of damage to your drywall. They're extremely cheap, just something to remember to put on there. So outlet and outlet covers again, and also you get the door handle. This is a maybe, another maybe. You can leave them all on there. Door handle's not that expensive too. If you do replace some, you should probably replace all, make it match. But on this one, we will probably leave it. Furnace works fine. We tested it. A little old. But don't forget to put a furnace filter in there. You don't want to put a furnace filter in probably every 6 months. You might have your maintenance guy go out there and do that. More the better, but 6 months is definitely what you should aim for. Your tenants should not be reliant on to do it themselves. And definitely when you purchase properties, put in their furnace filter here. This is a big mess. But really, this one, we just need to run the ductwork to the vents. All the vents are there, but this ductwork got torn out. And running ductwork it's an expense, but it's not crazy expensive. The plumbing's all fine, but we need to pin it up. It's a big spaghetti mess over here, so we need to make sense of it, pin it up to the ceiling joists. That small gap exterior I mentioned earlier is right behind there. Just fill it in and clean up the garbage. Okay, so 76 budget. We're going to be all into it for just shy of $60,000. And it's about the rehab is 24, and the purchase plus the closing was 35. The market analysis on this one. This is a hard property to judge because it's sort of in the middle of the areas. It's also potentially nice. It's a really nice looking home, whereas the house next door has a little bit of a. It's usually not as nice, but I came to about 80,000 probably, gives us about 20 in equity, which puts us at just about 75%. So we can get that loan. This is not a great deal. It's a solid one. It works. Our rent price should be about $995. It's a 3-2 house. It was a great curb appeal, which puts us at a 1.66% rent cost ratio, which is above 1.5%. So we're doing all right there. Assuming we have $3,500 a year in expenses and 10% vacancy with a 9% cap rates that take more. Yeah. 10% vacancy, $3,500 a year expenses, we have a 12.1 cap, so we're doing pretty well. And the cash flow would be $1,856 a year, which is $150 a month, with 9% interest only. We will refinance that out eventually and have an even better one. But we're doing just fine on this property. Not a steal by any means, but it's a solid deal. And this is just how we calculate it. And just to note, when you have a fully financed property that cash flows, your cash on cash return is actually infinite, which is a really nice thing. So I talked a little bit before about learning construction costs. One good way is contractor bids. Make them itemized, go through them. Start to learn, compare and contrast. They will be different. Talking to other investors, talking to people in construction, books and online sources like the book I mentioned before, From Bigger Pockets, and also reviewing the results. It makes good sense to get away to the end of the presentation if you have to. Make sure to always review your results, even if it's painful. We've had projects that went terrible. I mean, some of them come in under budget, but generally the error most people make is to come in over budget, not under budget. We've got a property, it's just absolute disaster. It was down in the Belvedere area of Grandview, and we bought it for 25, and I thought we were going to put 25 minutes into Forks here. It was $50 should be worth playing more, but everything was wrong with that house. Like the electrical in the basement didn't work. The cabinets just turned to dust when you touched them. And on and on. And then we had a contractor we think we had a lot of problems with. It ended up doubling the rehab budget, and so it's just a highlight point. Due diligence is key. Had I spent more time on those cabinets, I probably would have realized they were bad. And I tested the electrical more carefully, I probably would have realized it was bad. And in addition to that, it's just highlights. I'm talking about reviewing your results, so that's painful. I didn't want to look at it. I knew it was terrible. still want to look at it. Look at it very carefully, learn from your mistakes.
Do you have your contractors use the same bid sheet so you can compare?
We
apples
do.
to
I
apples?
send them the scope of work. When I'm using a contract, we'll send them the scope of work, my scope of work without the price, without my budgeted prices in it. And I tell them, you fill it out on my scope of work, or you don't get to work for us. I don't want to deal with. I've tried to compare 3 contractor bids on massively different documents, and also some would include something, and some would include something that wouldn't tell me what they were included. Like they were not taking something out, they wouldn't commission it. It's just a nightmare. So I just send them my document and I say, put your bid on this document. I do that in Excel. So there's some general costs. I don't even want to spend much time on these because they vary so much. It varies on things you have. Like, for example, an interior door, we're going to usually get 125 is what a contractor bids it. Like electrical panels, 1,000, but now we're getting it for even less than that. Light fixture is 50, but if you get a nicer light fixture, it's much more than that. So often, it varies by the contract. We've had a contractor charge us 125 for ceiling fans, we had another one charge us 170. And it probably depended a lot on which ceiling fan they were putting in. So that one goes back to standardization. And you can tell a contractor, I want you to use these materials. It goes back to that, and also goes back to compare your contractor. Sometimes we had one contractor bid that was so ridiculous. It wasn't like bad or good, but it was like both. So it was like a countertop for like, just a countertop for bathroom vanity was like $800. But then it was like floor, like all the flooring in the kitchen, like $700. And it is a huge kitchen, by the way. And so it was like, it made no sense. So I just crossed off the ones that were all bad. I mean, I had a really good bid price. Unfortunately, that contractor did not turn out to be that particularly good. But it just shows you itemized. And if you don't like what they have on something, cross it off. Or tell them like, I mean, it gives you all the leverage in the negotiation. You can say, these items don't make any sense, they're too high. You need to bring them down. What are they going to say? Oh, well, on these items I was really low, so I'll do that, but I'll bring them up. No, not even John's that bold. So getting an itemized bid gives you the leverage in the negotiation, and it also allows you to develop this construction cost and compare and contrast, because $150 for a toilet is a low-end toilet. I was Googling a toilet the other day, and because that's what I do in my free time. And there was some toilet is actually like a square, it was like a squarish toilet, and it was on sale from Home Depot. I was on the website for $1,150, and I don't know why someone would feel that a toilet would be worth that much. I wouldn't give a crap about it.
It's like $150 pair of pants. Have you ever sat on a square toilet?
I would just like to apologize. So, the importance of measuring. Measuring is very important. I talked about it can be painful sometimes, especially when you have a deal that goes sideways. But you need to measure. If you're not, first and foremost, this also has helped you learn rehab costs. Okay, if you put together budgets and don't measure it, you're wasting your time. It is completely useless. You get nothing out of it. Because if your budgets are always coming in great, and you're like, oh, I'm doing fine, I'm doing incredible, but your real results are terrible, you're not going to learn that from comparing and contrasting, and you're not going to fix the problem. This is where you fix the problem. So it also brings a better ability to evaluate potential purchases. If you're buying these big rehabs and thinking you come in on a low budget, you're budgeting them all, and then all these things come up, and the property ends up not being very good, you need to know that. Maybe you're buying properties that need too much work, and you need to pay a little bit more, but buy properties in better condition. Trust but verify. Measuring keeps honest people honest. And a watchful eye makes people, most people are good. Most people are decent. Not all, but most people. But even good people can sometimes be tempted by the dark side. A watchful eye prevents that. And you can also ask for the right amount of financing. We want to finance properties before. You need to be very careful about this, especially if you're looking for private loans and you don't have a lot of startup capital. You need to be able to get the money you need up front. Now you can ask for a second, or in some cases you can expand the loan, but you want to ask for the right amount of financing up front, and knowing your rehab costs is key. The importance of accountability. Some contractors and some employees are simply utterly incompetent. In fact, some are dishonest. In fact, we've been
picking up?
I don't know. We've been ripped off before, and you know we've had we're just dealing with right now this subcontractor we stopped using sent us the most ridiculous bills we've ever seen, like $1,500 to $100 to hang some mini blinds and remove a little trash and like paint some cabinets, which he did horrible. So it happens, the first thing is don't be afraid to lecture. I mean, if somebody's not doing right, tell them they're not doing right. Don't be mean about it, but be fair and firm. This needs to happen. If employee's arriving late, you cannot arrive late and still work here. If a contractor is letting a job drag on, tell them that. People don't like, I mean, be nice, well, let's put it differently. Be polite, but be firm. And furthermore, if you're gonna hire employees, or even with contractors too, just get this in your mind. Hire slowly, fire quickly. We have never regretted firing an employee. It's tough, it's terrible to do, but it's just.
Can I add on to that?
No.
We've never regretted firing an employee. The only regret we always have is not letting them go earlier. That's
Yes.
always been the problem.
And that's virtually every case. The number of cases where it's like, we did it at the right time, probably a single hand. And that's probably your experience as well. It's generally, the normal error is to hold on too long.
Kind of like marriage.
I will not comment on that. There are 4 ways to rehab a property. You can do it yourself. You can hire a general contractor, or you can hire subcontractors, the individual subcontractors, the handyman and the vendors, and oversee it all yourself. You basically are the general contractor. Or you can hire employees. That's the way we generally do it, along with some subcontractors. Now, doing it yourself, the first advantage is it's cheap. You're not paying any employees, but it takes time, and time is equal to money. And so you don't work for free. So you got to take that into mind. You have more control of the project, but at the same time, no one is knowledgeable and skillful about everything, and many people are not knowledgeable or skillful about the rehab projects at all. You can start right away. You don't have to wait for somebody to become available, but you will still need a subcontractor because you don't know everything. And I'd say if you're going to do it yourself, you've got to be honest about what you can do and what you can't do. You can't say like, I just believe I can install whatever. You need to be very honest up front. Like, let's say, or install a countertop, like someone in this room. Anyways, that being said, I absolutely love do-it-yourselfers. They are the gift that just keeps on giving. So, I've seen over 1,000 houses in Kansas City that we've gone through, and made offers on many in the last 3.5 years. And I started a little picture project. So this right here is a closet with a lot of shelves, a lot of them. This right here, foam should be illegal, like for anyone. It expands when you put, after it dries. People don't know that, so it's all over the place. This right here, I'm not sure this guy knows how roofs work. Just in case, you're in the basement, you got a little throne right there, you put some boxes and don't want to go all the way upstairs, right? Or you want to play basketball in the kitchen? Because that's why not? Who am I to judge? If anyone can explain how this dishwasher works, I would certainly be interested in that. These are all like those little planks that you have, those crates are made out of. This guy had them everywhere throughout the house. He built the shed out of them. And yes, that's an outlet cover. That's an outlet, and that's another one in the soffit in front of the house. This house is the most strangely wired house you've ever seen. One light switch turned every light in the house. And they turned it off. It was absolute madness. But it was also a split in the Summit for $35,000, so we actually bought that house. This is actually good work, but this picture does not do it justice. This deck is 3 times the size of the house. It just keeps going and going and going. And this is what?
Lawn care must be nothing.
Oh yeah. And the house is just a piece of garbage, and this deck is just magnificent. Work of art. Okay, this right here is a plumbing stack. Okay. This right here is a heating duct. And that's a doorway into a concrete wall. But I digress. Okay, general contractors. The advantage to a general contractor is they're usually skilled. They usually have a lot of, they have good subcontractors, they're good employees, they know what they're doing. They're you don't get a good general contractor by being bad at what you do. I shouldn't say that. You usually don't. They're expensive though. They're quick. Usually, they'll do a project much faster than handymen or even your employees sometimes. But at the same time, they're actually really expensive. And then low hassle, usually they take care of a lot of the scheduling issues, but they're possibly booked and you gotta wait for them to start. The good ones usually get booked. Can I wait to the end of the presentation or is it? Thank you.
What is a ballpark on how much more it costs to have a contractor, a general contractor versus yourself?
So handyman 20, versus yourself, I'm not 100% sure on that, but
If
versus
you-
handyman 20 to 30% maybe, 30%? They got probably 20%. I mean, it's ballpark and very really high-end contractors, 100%.
Okay.
They're easy to let go. If you use them for project, didn't like them, just never call them again. But it's also noteworthy, the skilled, quick, and low hassle does not apply to all of them. Subcontractors are handymen. They're less expensive than general contractors, but they're more expensive than employees. They're specialized sometimes. Sometimes you have like a really good painter. And you also got a guy who's good at basic carpentry. You can have like, you can mix and match it there. So you can take advantage of their specialization. More hassle in scheduling because general contractor does a lot of that for you, especially if they take on some of the subcontractors. But these guys are also easy to let go. Just don't use them for the next project. But again, they're also possible. Employees, they're the least expensive, but because no overhead, no profit. But they're bad incentives. We actually had one employee that we hired just for one job actually just literally told us, I feel like I'm working myself out of a job. If somebody ever says that to you, fire them immediately. But yeah, their incentive, there's no reason to finish the project quickly. A handyman, if they get done with the project, they get paid to get on the next one. An employee can just milk the clock. So you've got to be on top of it. More control, but it's also more hassle in scheduling. And you have more flexibility, you can change the scope if you need to much more easily, but you have to have consistent work, generally speaking. I mean, maybe you hire them on for one project, but if you're going to hire an employee, you need to give some idea, at least some security that there's going to be more than one job. I mean, sometimes layoffs happen, but you got to have something. They also start immediately or whatever you want, and they're harder to let go. You got to fire them. And it's something, if you're going to hire employees, you've got to be willing to fire them. It's tough, but it's not impossible. Picking the right contractor, ask around, ask for referrals. If they've done right by somebody in this room, they'll probably do right by you. If they've done wrong by somebody in this room, they'll probably do. Interview the contractor, ask for pictures of their previous work, ask for how long a job took, ask for what they cost, things like that. Don't just assume they're good or take somebody else's word, but interview them. In addition, ask for references and call them. One of our contractors we used, I asked for some references, I called them, and later they're all great, and he came in and asked me, he's like, you're the first person like 10 years to call any of my references. And it's just like, you gotta be kidding me. So you call the references, and because they'll often, you might think they're just gonna be a rubber stamp. They'll often tell you stuff that you would be very shocked and really tell you that no, you shouldn't actually use them. You get what you pay for. The cheapest contractor is not always the best. It usually probably is the best. Often they might be paying under the table or just do sloppy work. Any contractor you hire needs to have liability insurance, and if they have any employees, they need workman's comp. They need workman's comp insurance because otherwise they can the workman's comp or OSHA or no, whatever. They consider you as owing that. If you hire a contractor and they don't have workman's comp for their employees, you as the owner are billed for it. So, because they consider you as basically having hired them, but not.
How do you document that?
You ask for a certificate of insurance, and on that certificate of insurance, there's a part that's for workman's comp, and it should be checked off. Consider time incentives. Maybe if it's a 4-week project, or you think it's about that, 3 weeks, give them a bit of a bonus if they finish it. If they go 5 weeks, they owe you you take out $500. Another week, another $500, something like that. Always sign a contract or have an independent contractor contract signed up front. That way you have, if there's a dispute, you know what to do with it, like go to mediation, etc. And don't be afraid to let them go, even if it's in the middle of a project. They're doing terrible by you, try to negotiate a settlement to get out of it and get on to somebody better. And never pay all of it up front. Under no circumstance do you want to pay all the money up front. And also, don't cut the last check until everything is done. I heard recently that some people are doing where they pay 80% at the end, and then they'll do their own systems check, and if there's any other items, they have to come and finish it to that other 20%. Because you can't get contracts back out there if they've already finished, if they've already paid them. Hiring employee, the first two are exactly the same. Ask around, look for referrals. There are people, I'm looking to hire somebody. Oh, I know John here, or whatever. And you give them what you pay for. If you're trying to get a minimum wage person to do skilled carpentry, good luck. Interview them first, even for construction. We were able to figure out people who were they come in with beer on their breath, they show up late. There's all sorts of ways to just figure out that you don't want to hire this person. Ask for references and call them. Remember, give them a tryout. Don't hire them immediately. Give them a tryout and tell them explicitly it's a tryout. Not only is it a tryout like, oh, we're going to try you for a couple of weeks, but have a specific date, 60 days, 90 days. At this time, we are basically going to reevaluate you, and we are either going to not hire you or basically rehire you. And make that clear to yourself, because you don't want to get caught in that, oh, it's convenient to have this employee on board, so I'll just whatever. I mean, they're not that great, but whatever. No, you need to make it, this is the day we're going to decide whether or not you have a place here, because you don't want to accept mediocrity. Mediocrity is so easy to accept, but great companies do not, and so it's key to force yourself to make decisions to let go of people who are not great. Demand accountability. Like I was saying before, you don't want to let, if they're showing up late to work, you need to tell them to fix it, and if they don't, let them go. And again, hire slow, fire fast. This is not really, this is a great book on hiring. It's called Who by G.F. Smart. It's not really applicable to construction employees, but if you're hiring office staff, it's a fantastic book, and I highly recommend it. Okay, so scheduling employees and contractors. Time is money. The faster you can get started, the faster you can finish, the better. Think ahead. You want to be 2 or 3 weeks out at least, and so you know what's coming. What do I need to prepare for? You don't want to be reactive in this. You want to be proactive. You want to be careful and respectful of time. You don't want to bring the carpet guys out when the subfloor needs to be fixed. So really be cognizant to respect other people's time as well, and be careful about that with your scheduling. Mistakes happen. Don't get all up in arms about it, but just try to do what you can to have it. Have backups. So if you have one plumber and that plumber's booked out all week, that's a good problem. You want multiple guys and people to be able to do these different things. So have 2 plumbers. You have a primary plumber and a backup plumber at least. Several handymen. Have a list of people, and where do you go if the person you normally use is booked, or if all of a sudden things go sour. We've had guys who've been great by us, and all of a sudden just turn on a dime and started doing shoddy work, charging too much, etc. And it happens. Have backups and prevent delays. And don't tolerate flakes. If they don't show up, if they're coming in late, handing or whatever, move on to the next person, because that's a really bad sign. I mean, once it happens, but if it's consistent, move on. Next, you need to create a system to monitor and schedule work. You cannot. I highly advise against having just a piece of paper and sticky notes all over the place. You want a system-type approach, a schedule out of where people are going. This is what ours looks like. Phil, if you can hand out a copy of that to everyone, pass it around. But we have, this is an Excel document. We actually have macros that you can hide this turnover part or hide this rehab part and expand it to show the list of vendors that are on each project. So we booked out, these are our employees, we booked them out here. This is a vendor, this is our painter here. This is sort of, we've changed our system. This is still, we're still working the kinks out. But you can see this is kind of an idea like, how do I schedule everything to make sure that people are all, that I've got each project assigned, each person assigned, and I'm not wasting time, I'm not double booking, I'm not, I'm moving forward on this project as quickly as possible without making any mistakes. Project analysis. After the project's done, you don't want to just look at the number and say, okay, I budgeted 25 and it came in at 25, great. I'm the perfect estimator of rehab expenses. Next problem. Just throw it out. Because maybe you were way high on HVAC and way low on flooring or something like that. So you want to break it down individually. And so we have HVAC, what do we budget, what do we charge, what will we charge, contractor, et cetera. These are these individual items, and then you add it all up and see how close you were. But that way you can perfect it. That's what you're trying to do. It is not a perfect science. Nothing in real estate is perfect science. We are trying to do the best we can. And unfortunately, in rehab, you will make mistakes. It's going to happen. We've made mistakes. It's not something you can avoid. So I would actually accept and embrace the mistakes you have, and just prepare yourself that budgets are going to be broken. You're going to miss something in due diligence. Yeah. Your microphone's going to start tweaking or whatever. Mistakes are going to happen. Embrace it. You will probably also be stolen from, and not just like an AC unit running off, but or maybe somebody breaking in, stealing your appliances. That's happened to us. We've had subcontractors wildly overcharge us before. We've had employees who buy their lunches on our card. We've had all sorts of things. It happens, but the cost is usually rather small. Not always, but usually it's rather small. But the anger and the frustration and the feeling like embarrassment is usually much larger. It doesn't match. So just realize it's going to happen. Think of long term. Some guys stealing copper out of your house. What is it to them? It's a couple $100. This is not the end of the world. You're going to get it back. So think long term. Learn from your mistakes. There's every mistake. And Philip here has a sign in his office that I really like. It just says make more mistakes. Mistakes, if you're not making mistakes, you're making a mistake. Because mistakes, it's a learning process. It's sort of you're trying to perfect it. You're going back and forth a little too high, and then you finally get it. And so making mistakes is a sign that you're growing and you're getting better. And so embrace it and learn from it. Only if you learn from it. Only if you make a conscious effort to learn from it. And finally, the more systems, the better. I mean, we're going to make mistakes, but we don't want to try to make mistakes. And the more systems you have, the more you can systematize the lessons you've learned. So we made this mistake, we're going to systematize a way not to make that mistake again. Like, I waited too long to start this project. Now I've got a scheduling system in place. Or this contractor overbilled me and I didn't see it. Well, now I've got a system to check the bill, and I just paid it. I didn't check the book. Now I've got a system to make sure it doesn't happen. And finally, prepare as much as you prepare a lot, educate yourself, go to seminars, read books, podcasts, all the rest of it. But don't be afraid to jump in, because mistakes are inevitable. But in the long run, it's the people who actually jump in who make the money. And that is that. So I will open the floor up to questions on rehab. Yes.
I want you to elaborate on the mistakes, because obviously you're not doing the proper training or education or reading, and you go in and you make huge errors or mistakes that those could have been prevented.
It could have been. It's a fine line. It's a balancing act. You absolutely should prepare. You should never. No one should. If this is your first time you've been to an investment seminar or presentation and you haven't done much research in real estate other than that, I wouldn't go out and buy your house. A house right after this. You definitely want to read some books like Millionaire Real Estate Investor and Flip and Jeffrey Taylor's book and the 25-page ebook we sent out. Of course, you should read that. That's mandatory. And you should go to seminar presentations, podcasts, all the rest. But at some point, you have to jump in, and you want to jump in with every tool you can. But you don't want to think. There's no point where you get there. There's no getting there. I mean, sometimes you'll hear like these really successful people talk about like, all these mistakes I made in the past, how ridiculous they were, but luckily now I don't make any mistakes. I'm perfect now. You got to get that vibe from them. They never stop making mistakes. I mean, Time Warner bought AOL. I mean, those guys have been around. So, Murdoch bought MySpace, and he'd been around for a long time. So there's all sorts of things like that. You just learn as much as you can, but you need to jump in. And the key is not that, I'm just going to make some mistakes and I'll learn from those mistakes. You want to do as much as you can to prevent the mistakes up front. It's just to recognize that they are going to happen no matter how much you prepare. You could read and study and prepare for 20 years. You'll still make mistakes. don't let that fear stop you from getting in or moving ahead. That's the key point I'm trying to make. Does that answer your question?
Where would someone new, especially to the area, start finding general contractors and contractors? I understand to ask somebody like you if they're good, but how do you start to find them?
Not ask if we're good, ask if they're good, ask who they are. This room is the best place to start. So just going around asking people, actually, Kim, MAREI has where are you, Kim?
I'm hiding.
Oh, you're hiding in the back. MAREI has a list of recommended contractors and vendors, right, or is it?
We don't really have a list, but we have a form, so you can go ask them to use this vendor, or can you recommend a vendor?
Yeah, so you can go into the MAREI form and doing that, or just talking around this room, is there some contractors that you know? If you want to come up afterwards, I can give you some recommendations.
It's called Deb's cell phone.
Yeah, this room is great. You can also go, anyone else you know in real estate, is a good place to ask. Or you can go to like Bigger Pockets forums or Mr. Landlord forums and go to their, I think you have to go to the marketplace and ask, are there any contractors you recommend? Or you can just call, you can go past this, you can call on Craigslist or Angie's List of ads. Just make sure you're gonna do that more due diligence up front, more asking questions, interviewing them, calling for references, things like that.
What are the services besides furnace, HVAC, do you have send out regularly to your rental properties? Like, do you have pest control go out regularly or anything?
On
like
some of them, yes. Generally, Phil, you can talk about pest control here?
Not too much. We basically, if we know that there's bugs, we'll obviously get it treated. And then for the first month that they're there, if they see anything, we'll make sure it gets treated. But we don't do it regularly for single-family houses, because if bugs are coming in to a single-family house, it means the resident is dirty and it's their fault.
We pay for it after how long?
Usually it's a month.
We'll pay for it a month, and then if after that, we charge
consider
it
it their
to the
fault
resident.
at that point.
Because at that point.
Now, if it continues for longer than a month, we'll make sure we take care of it. We gotta make sure we take care of that.
But we just charge it back.
So then the only thing you provide regularly is HVAC, right? Furnace.
Well, we do the furnace filters, we also check the fire, when we're doing that maintenance check, we do the furnace filters, we check the fire alarms and carbon monoxide detectors, we put one carbon monoxide detector in each house. We'll check to make sure there aren't any leaks, we'll check to make sure, we'll make sure the windows are functional.
Not usually.
Yeah, we check to make sure there aren't any leaks, and we check to make sure that generally the house is in good working order and they're not complete slobs and they haven't destroyed them. So those are the only things we consistently provide, the rest is maintenance.
How often do you do that maintenance check?
Every 6 months.
Every 6 months.
I've heard a good way to remind yourself is every daylight savings. Remember, you gotta do your maintenance checks.
Yeah.
You don't do annual mechanical maintenance on these HVAC units?
Well, that's like the furnace filters and things of that nature.
Yeah, but besides just your filters, checking the blower, doing the tune-ups, checking the freon.
There's more stuff that we want to do, but it's hard, it's kind of on a, to get to us. Mechanical can go bad, and little fixes, preventative maintenance is great. We also we have a lot of properties and we're trying to organize it, so that's kind of like, we want to get to that point where we're doing more things like that, but we're not at this current point.
How do you take care of lawn care?
Lawn care, we leave to the resident unless it's for houses and duplexes, so they're responsible for it, and if the city sends us a letter, then we get on their case, and if the city bills us, we do the work and then bill it right back to the resident. On a fourplex or greater, we do the lawn care ourselves.
Eugene to Kansas City, did you throw a dart? What?
Well, I guess it actually started like this. First and foremost, my dad is from Wichita, Kansas, and my mom was raised in Emporia, Kansas. And we've got aunts and uncles. Our grandparents are in Wichita, and we've got uncles and aunts in Wichita, Gardner, Emporia, Springfield, just all over the place. This is where we're from originally. So the Midwest made sense. We were sick of flipping, and also right when we kind of gotten sick of flipping a little bit, and like this isn't really getting us what we want, and this thing called the first-time home buyers tax credit went away. Anyone remember that? And literally, I looked, the sales of the month just dropped in half the next month. Like the pending sales the next month just dropped in half, and it just killed the sale, their ability to sell these properties. Supposed to be doing a lot of short sales, and banks at the exact same time tightened it. They used to be just giving them away, and then now it's like, no, we're not going to sell for anything less than the appraisal or the BPO. So we got sick of BPOs and appraisals, and then a friend of ours, who actually Dad's partnered with in a separate business, was coming out to Kansas City. He was investing all over the country, and he was one of the, and he had come to Kansas City and invited us out on a trip. We took a trip out here, and we looked at the prices here versus the prices in Oregon, and the rents here versus the rents in Oregon, and the prices were much lower, and the rents were a little bit lower, but not that bad. And the rent costs were much better, and it just hit us like, this makes perfect sense. And then we actually went up to see the Woosters, who were in St. Joseph at the time, and they'd just gotten their third big complex under contract, and they're just showing us this 150 unit complex that's like, oh wow, like, they're buying this for this price. I mean, they bought a 150 unit complex in Riverside for $3 million, and needed to put only like a couple $100,000 into it. It's just ridiculous price. And it just kind of hit us like, this makes perfect sense. Our extended family's all out here. You know, we've seen this market a bit. We met a real estate agent on that trip who was very, very high quality, and we'd seen also what the Woosters were doing, and they were having tremendous success. And it just kind of hit us. We did some double checking. We checked like, okay, population growth is increasing. The crime rate is you know, the metro area is kind of high, but it's also going down a little bit. The rest is, you know, the vacancy rates aren't too bad, things like that. So we did some double checking on the fact that that's kind of what drove us.
Thank you. You mentioned briefly that you don't like to pay contractors like under the table or something, but like, don't you find like the cheapest, best deals are like, let's say contractor's super cheap and it's all under the table cash only, like would you not do that?
We would not, no. I mean, it's up to the discretion of any individual investor what they want to do. But you can get, I mean, if you get caught, I mean, that could be big. I mean, like
If they get hurt.
Oh, yeah, the big constant problem is that they get hurt. I mean, you can get charged for not having insurance and workman's comp, but if somebody gets hurt on the site, they're going to go, if the contractor's got no liability, they go to you. So there's a big risk you're taking there. In addition to that, we have a fairly, we don't have a huge footprint, but we have a decent sized footprint. We're not going under the radar anymore. So we don't want to do that for the liability issues and the potential costs. But if you know, I would recommend against it, but it's up to any individual investor's discretion.
Have you found an average ballpark is the same for appliances here as in Eugene or other markets, or do they vary vastly?
No, they're pretty close. They're pretty close. There might be a couple little differences, but we haven't seen many major differences between costs and such things. The biggest cost is between brands. There's some brands, appliances can be hugely expensive, and some are pretty cheap. I mean, the ones we're buying now are like an entire set for like $12.50 or something. So it's a pretty good deal.
One more question.
One more question. Who's got it? Oh, don't leave it.
Well, do you guys set up wholesale accounts? As much volume as you're doing, I think you could make wholesale deals of some kind and really save a lot of money.
Yes. We have wholesale accounts with Home Depot, Lowe's, and Westlake.
Yeah, we have credit accounts as well.
Credit.
Also with our landscaper, we have a lot of landscaping, so we get a really good deal for all that stuff. And yeah, if you do things in bulk, you can get a cheaper price.
And remember, MAREI has the 2% Home Depot cost savings. So,
Thank you.
what was our last check? Do you remember what that was?
Oh, it's $2,500.
Yeah, so last check we got from the MAREI discount was $2,500. So make sure to take advantage of that.